Welcome, guys. We're back with Brother Space. We've had a little break. We've been busy. Things have been going on. I'm trying to sort out this laptop. We have conversations about men's mental health and well-being from a Muslim perspective, talking about things that are relevant and topical. And yeah, here we are. So let's go, boys. What's going on?
Yeah, alhamdulillah, another session. I think we decided to do the topic of navigating through mentally challenging times. Um, yeah, as we're aware, no one's exempt from mental health. Unfortunately, what is inevitable is that you'll be challenged mentally throughout your life, whether that could be a physical situation, um, a divorce, um, loss of life in the family, sickness. These things can put you in a mentally challenging time in the space, sorry, and knowing how to navigate through that in a positive manner is key. And unfortunately, a lot of us are unaware of those skills and tools to do that. This can lead to mental health. And unfortunately, one in every three people will be diagnosed with mental health. The current climate is quite tough, and there is a lot going on. Everyone seems to have a lot on their plate, and just different circumstances. Cost of living's gone up. The rate of cancer is very high. Everybody seems to know somebody with cancer at the moment. Um, yeah, there's a lot going on, and we need to be mindful and aware and put ourselves in spaces of prevention and assistance rather than, in my opinion, um, forced help.
Mm.
So I guess we'll unpack a bit today of our thoughts, views, and opinions of ways to navigate through mentally challenging times and maybe share some of our own which you may want to use or not. What works for us may not work for you. At the same time, it may, and it may be an option for something for you to try if you haven't. And ultimately, it may spark a creative thought or something that you can give a go. And maybe even at least start to think of these things and prompt your thoughts in the aspect of being prepared, you know? So what I mean by that, I guess I've started. So in my aspect, it would be about identifying your positive coping mechanisms and identifying your support systems, internal and external. So for me, that would be friends, family, and then internal would be GP, work colleagues. As alhamdulillah, I work in the mental health field, so I have access to professionals that the everyday community don't have access to. Something that you are and would have access to would be the Recovery College. Also, the Muslim Experience Network, which is what we're part of.
Sorry, Hamza, what's a recovery college?
So, Recovery College is under the CNWR and the NHS. They offer courses and services which are for patient professionals, carers, and anybody in the community, general public, to receive information. There's a number of courses and they are beneficial as they're taught and given by professionals and people with lived experience. So some of the courses I've personally done there are things like self-compassion, death and bereavement, um, and they have things along. They almost have a course for every diagnosis and understanding of that. You know, all down to little things like managing depression, hearing voices, um, and they continue to add to these. I think what's good about these courses, in my opinion, is they're groups a lot of the time. Most of them are face to face, some of them are online. But I think what's beneficial is that you don't have to go there and engage. Because I understand that it's difficult when you're in a block space to do that. Sometimes just making that big step and going somewhere it is a lot, you know. But what you'll get is the same thing that inshallah you get from us today is we'll be sharing ours. A lot of the time when you're in a dark, tough space, you feel you're the only one going through that, and no one understands, no one's relatable, and no one else has been through it. You'll go to these spaces and you've all chosen it for whatever reason, but the title has got you there. So that on its own is a connecting factor. People share their experiences. Some may resonate with. A lot of time you'll be surprised with how much you resonate with. You know? And then you'll hear other people's coping mechanisms, things that worked for them, things that didn't work for them. Some of them you may have tried, some of them you may not have. You can add those to your list of things that you haven't. At the same time, as I said prior, what's for you may not be for them. Or sorry, what's for them may not be for you. But then it may be thought provocative for you to think, okay, they swimming is calming for them, but I can't swim. I might start running. I used to like running. I haven't done that in a long time. That used to be good to me. I used to like that. I used to hear me clear my head. Someone else say they might go for a drive. You might want to go on a pedal bike. You know. So yeah, it's beneficial in that aspect.
One thing that's kind of going through my mind at the moment is that we are, I guess, talking about, um, I guess, ways to manage, distressing times, stressful times. But I feel like we should talk a bit more about how to actually know you're in those times, because I find that a lot of people, especially brothers, they don't actually know when they're in that, space, or they feel like, oh, I've gone through something distressing and I can manage that. I'm managing, but in reality, they're not. But they don't really know what to look for. And then you say a bunch of signs of something, and then they're like, oh yeah, I really resonate with that. I don't know if that's happened with you guys, but I know that for me personally, that's something that I resonate quite a lot with. And the one that kind of got me thinking about that is like overworking. And a lot of
Mm.
services will tell you that you need to think less and you need to maybe do a bit more things. One of the hallmarks of therapy that is offered on the NHS is CBT, and one component of that is kind of behavioral activation. And that's just a fancy way of saying making you do things so you're thinking less. But I find with a lot of brothers, when you use that, it's not very effective because they're doing quite a lot already. For I think for brothers, it's quite common to distract yourself, throw yourself into your work, overwork, pick up shifts, do back to back, do overtime. And I guess it feeds into that kind of mindset of, make the money, do this,
Do
after
anything
five.
but face up, yeah.
Yeah, basically. Um, and I don't know about you guys, but that's kind of the main one for me. When someone's kind of working a bit too much is usually when I'm like, oh, I think something else might be going on outside of that.
100%. I totally agree with that. I think as men, yeah, naturally we try to bury our head in the mission, and as long as it's positive, then it's working. you know. But unfortunately, um, whatever's still sitting there is going to be there. You know. Um, yeah, a lot of the time we dismiss um, issues that may raise emotions as men. You know. But in the aspect of answering your initial question regarding how to identify things like that, for me, it's about being self-aware and reflecting often and genuinely knowing yourself. You know, um, once you're in that space, you'd be able to identify change, little things. Yeah, you're burying your head in too much work. Are you close to burnout, or are you past burnout and you're just in overdrive mode? Um, do you usually go to the gym and you're not? Do you normally eat 3, 4 times a day and you're not? Are you up late and you used to be, than you usually are? You know, what's your sleep like right now? Um, what's your energy levels like in the day? Are you knocking that more coffee than you need to to fight through your days because you're up late, you're struggling in the day, you bit off more than you can chew with extra work because you try to dive into a positive mission to not address the negative that's going on in your life. Um, yeah, these a lot of these are initial signs of stress, depression, anxiety, you know, and not wanting to face with. I think the second step to that would be identifying positive coping mechanisms and go into who you can trust to have an open, honest, and vulnerable conversation and not feel that you're going to be crucified, especially as a man, for sharing emotions and being in a vulnerable space by what society and what has been put upon men would be deemed as a weakness. You know? And I think that is a big factor also. Some men even get to that space where they are ready to have an open, honest, and vulnerable conversation, but because they haven't thought about it prior and identified who are their support systems and who they feel that they trust they can go to, they reach the edge of the cliff. So then they go to the nearest person because they're already at breaking point. And unfortunately, the response that they get from the person was not what they thought was going to be. And that can be detrimental.
I feel like there's already you've kind of like detailed like steps of a process or steps of a journey, and some of those are like a journey in and of themselves, right? There's the actual realization that things are not okay,
Mm.
and it could be literally years that someone's going deeper and deeper and deeper into a hole, but because the hole is the norm to them, there's no awareness of that.
Mm.
And then getting to a point where you know that thing is not good, it's not healthy, it's not right, it's not okay, it's not how it should be, it's not optimal. To get from that point to then wanting to reach out or wanting to change, that itself, I think, particularly for men, is 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 often harder than the actual change.
Yeah.
It's often harder than the actual then the steps that come after that in terms of, you know, as you said, addressing those aspects, looking at, positive changes, positive, tweaks and adjustments. I think the change, once you get to the point that you want change, and you then can have clarity over how bad things are, I think the change actually is I'm not gonna say it's easy, but it's simple. It's simple but not easy.
I think there's a fear factor dynamic also.
Mm,
Once taking ownership and accountability and identifying that, yeah, change needs to take place, yeah, that is the biggest step.
mm,
But the scary step, and unfortunately, it comes back down to men more, is the society aspect of what's put
mm,
upon men. Because a lot of the time, when you need to make change, you need help.
mm.
Men like to be on their own mission,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
we're
yeah,
told
yeah.
we to do it ourselves. You're a man, get on with it, crack on. You're in a crisis and you're trying to make change. You need help.
Mm,
One of you going to for that help, until you're really going to share everything to really get that help. A lot of the time, when remember, it's taken a lot to get to this space where you're going to go and seek that help.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
In my opinion, a lot of time men are forced help. We don't even seek it. But
And also do we even know where the help is, what the help is, or that's another angle.
yeah, but in the fear, in the aspect of fear and deciding that, yeah, you're ready to make a change, but then who do you seek for this help? I think that's the scary part,
Mm,
because it's almost, it can it can feel almost emasculating.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Um, and yeah, there's ownership and accountability in us to take on that. And then there's also what's been put on us to take from that also. And why I think it makes it even so much harder is because you're going against the natural grain of things. There's a big backlog.
mm, mm,
And that's why that help even feels more overwhelming, because you're going there for a current issue, but you know it's stemming from so much stuff.
mm.
And it's like, do I start this now, really? And do I have the time to do this now, really?
Yeah, 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 yeah,
And
yeah.
I've got so much going on now, really. And I've got so much people relying on me now, really.
And how do you even begin to press pause on that to
Ex- Exactly. Because
mm,
remember, you're a man.
mm,
And
mm, mm,
even though, yeah, you're going to seek help for this, the rest of the stuff can't stop, because that's man stuff. And
mm.
that needs to be done. You know, you still need to protect, you still need to provide, and you can't take time out. And things need to be done.
Spot on.
This is unfortunate reality,
Mm,
you know. Um, my circumstances and my input is changing the dynamic and understanding that self-compassion is not selfish,
100%.
and you can't feed anybody from an empty cup.
100%.
So sometimes you have to take two steps back, being able to reevaluate your situation and able to move forward. And I think one dynamic of the demasculation side and the other aspect of if I fall short from other things and I let people down, I am less of a man.
Mm.
So therefore, dismiss the negative, bury it, and crack on. I'll be all right because I'm a man and I'm known to be all right. Because remember, it's subconsciously put on you. You hear it so much. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like, so you're almost telling yourself, yeah, of course I'm going to be all right. I'm
Mm.
like, this is what we do. Like, this is what men do. Like, there's another man whose situation is much worse than mine. That's subjective to him. Everyone's patience and tolerance levels are different. The weight feels heavy for you right now. A weight halved is
Mm.
a weight shared is a weight halved. You know, but that's my take on it.
I think as well with the kind of feeling of being emasculated by asking for help or receiving help or anything like that, there's that kind of element of that you might actually feel like, oh, it's okay to ask for help, but you know that others don't. And I feel like that's a big problem for people because some people they kind of know things are wrong. They don't really know what to do with it because they don't know how to navigate, the help or who to even ask for because they know other people have these conceptions of, okay, well, he's asking for help. He must be weak. He can't cope. He can't handle. How's he then gonna, handle all these other responsibilities a man's supposed to have, like a family, income, supporting parents, doing X, Y, Z, holding down a job. Um, so I think that's kind of like a big one that we all kind of putting each other down because I guess it's not just one person that holds that belief, it's majority of people that hold that belief.
I feel like as we're talking, there's something that's coming into my mind, and that is that like watching this video, there's gonna be, inshallah, if it gets out there, there's gonna be two main people that we need to speak to. And one of those is the man himself who is in a mess right now
Mm.
and is in the dark right now. And the other is whoever else might be around him that he may well turn to. And I feel like maybe like a focus should be almost how, because we said it start like how do you navigate these times, right? So that
Mm.
navigation is both for the person in that and the person who is someone else in their life who might see that or might become aware of that. And so
Yeah.
perhaps if from both our personal perspective, but also like our professional experience, we could maybe like look at how how does that person identify that things are not okay and where do they go for support and how does that occur? But then also like for the person who says like, I'm okay to be honest with you, but I know my friend's not right now. I know something's wrong or they've disclosed something or but I don't even feel equipped or able or know how to answer that. Um
Yeah. So, all right. So I'm gonna answer it personally. When I was in a space where I felt I couldn't talk to anybody, I buried my head in sujood.
mm,
Tahajjud it wasn't for me, you know. I get up an hour before Fajr, I pray my 8 rakats, and on the last two, I bury my head there,
mm,
you know, and I would bear it all, you know, good, bad, ugly, breakdown, crying,
mm, mm,
you
mm,
know. Um, your head in sujood is the closest you'll be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in studio,
mm,
you know, and in my opinion, if you can't bear it all on the prayer mat, you shouldn't be ready to bear it to anybody else.
mm.
At the same time, remember, Allah will utilize people.
Yes, yes,
People
yes.
have encounters with you, you know.
Particularly if there's
When,
a barrier there, you know, for
sorry?
some, particularly if there's like a barrier there, because for some people it's like when things have got that bad, it's like they don't even feel, obviously it's incorrect, but they don't even feel like they're able to turn to Allah because of the shame, because of the guilt, because of maybe the sins they're involved in, maybe the slip ups, the muck ups, the
But for the person that's listening,
mm,
that's Shaitan's whispering your maths.
100%.
You know, you got to remember. Allah is the most merciful. It's the Rahman, you know, and don't allow Shaitan's whisper and your nafs to tell you that whatever you've done means you can't go back to Allah. Remember, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us weak. We're naturally going to fall to
mm,
sin, you know. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Sahabas would make tawbah. They were the best of mankind, which is why they were given Islam. You know, if they made Tobah, who do we
mm,
like? How do we think we don't need it? Do you know what I mean?
mm,
And this is where logic comes in. Do you know, like if they were the best of mankind and they had to go back for
mm.
things they feel they fell short of course we're gonna fall short. You know, it's about returning. It's about being sincere. It's about being authentic.
I think it's
You know,
important that that point. So I think it's really important as a to emphasize that the fact that because that's the thing, people feel so far away. You hear that thing like people they say, oh, they can't pray because they've done this or they've done that, and you know that's incorrect in and of itself, right? That's even more reason to turn back. But I think people do need that reminder. People do need to hear that we're gonna muck up. We're never gonna be perfect. We're never, ever, 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 ever gonna be perfect.
I want to emphasize that even further because people don't even realize that I think sometimes in the Quran it says multiple times that people have been created with I guess things that we synonymize or now currently call anxiety and depression and like imperfections. And then when people read them verses, they're like, oh, I didn't know that. But it's like everyone. It doesn't say men, it doesn't say women, it says everyone, every
Mm,
human, everyone, in mankind has been created with these. So it would be actually unnatural for you not to have them and
mhm,
not to expect it in your life at some point, whether you're 18, 14, 80, 84, like no matter what you are, where you are, or how you are, no matter how much is in your pocket, no matter what you have in this dunya, no matter how well or unwell you might be physically, mentally, you will experience that sometime. No one is kind of exempt from that. It's kind of like, I guess everyone knows that every soul shall taste death, and that's
mm,
something promised you. But there's also parts in scripture which say you're kind of not promised, but paraphrasing here, you're kind of promised to feel these emotions, to feel these things. And then you have, I guess, examples of the Sahaba, of the Prophet who have experienced all these kind of difficulties. I don't know, we kind of do that minimization thing, oh, our problems aren't as bad as this. We have, X, Y, Z in modern day, and they had something significantly worse. But I think that's kind of something that's killing us. We are compare and despair. Um,
mm,
but it's not helpful. It's not getting us anywhere.
perspective is key. Reflection is key, and seeking information is key. Um, Empathy and compassion to one another. And the same thing is information. You know, a lot we think people are aware of, they're not. Um, and I think reminders,
yeah,
um, the delivery of reminders. I
mm.
think, um,
I think, yeah, I think it is a thing that when people get so far away or what they perceive to be far away, at times you don't even want to engage with that which is good. You don't want the reminder, and after the reminder, I think the point Hamza was going to make about the delivery of the reminder, and again that thing of like, where's it coming from? Is it coming from a place of an intent of genuine sincerity? Is it a thing where you want good, you want the person to comprehend, you want the person to understand, you want the person to genuinely feel safe? Um, or is it a thing where we're trying to show each other up and we're trying to, sometimes unfortunately that's the thing, particularly when people are not perceived as that religious. Their
Mm,
perception of quote unquote religious people is that it's stiff and it's robotic and it's like
yeah.
this and it's the wagging a finger and it's all the fear with none of the hope, and none of the love. And we have to learn to balance, really, really, really have to learn to balance.
I see a quote and it said, I'm too halal for my haram friends and I'm too haram for my halal
Mm,
friends.
mm, mm.
Yeah. And yeah, it's funny, but it's deep as well
Yeah, 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 yeah,
because the brother that makes all these two haram friends, halal friends, they should be who he's leaning to and who he should aspire to, but he may feel uncomfortable to go to them based on that,
Mm,
you know. In my opinion, your circle of companions, you shouldn't be the strongest person physically. You shouldn't be the the furthest ahead on Dean.
mm,
You shouldn't be the most mentally strong. Because how do you strive? How do you progress? How do you do better? You know, that
mm,
doesn't mean that you leave everybody behind who may be in a dark space or not in as good space as you, but those circles need to overlap,
mm.
you know, so you can help people up, but then you can also be picked up, you know, and the circles continue to overlap, if that makes sense, you know, and I think the aspect of reminders is very important tone, approach, delivery, you know. Um, I've seen people like, for example, say, I don't go to that masjid no more.
Mm.
Why? I had a circumstance there, or there's a little situation that arises there, or I was spoken to a certain way there, or they're a bit harsh with this there,
Mm,
you know. And my thought process is nobody on this planet Earth could deter me from going to a masjid.
mm, mm,
It's not your home, and we don't have to speak. I will salam you, smile, and do what I'm coming there to do,
mm,
you know. But I get it at the same time, you know. I've had my own circumstances with either um, racist incidents, you know. And if my mom was weak, I could have easily been deterred,
mm,
you know. And then there's times where even I've shared things with friends before when I was in a space of ready to change, but who do I seek
mm.
as in a support system?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I've been through this full over as in tried and tested, you know. And I was sharing with the wrong people,
Mm.
and some would dismiss me. And because I was new in my journey, it infuriated me
mm,
because they didn't know what it took for me to share that with them. And some I did want an opinion or advice, and some I just wanted to vent and for someone to hear me, you know. And that's why it's about doing it prior. You want to identify these spaces before you're in a
before you
mentally
see
challenging
crisis.
space. Yes,
Mm,
because when you're at the edge of the cliff, you're in panic mode already, you know. So you're going to grab who you feel you're not going to make that decision logically,
mm, mm.
and that could put you in a detrimental space,
Mm.
depending on how it's received, what the response may be. You know, it may take a one finger push to have you over the cliff based on that response after you've tried to share, you know, and or it may make you never want to do it again, and then you hold it until you crash, you
And
know.
I think with a lot of us, particularly people in a lived experience kind of space, or people who are invested in mental well-being as a whole, or people who are coaches or therapists or whatever it might be, I think a lot of the time it is the fact that actually we potentially got to the point where we were on the cliff, and the foot was literally, you know, and it's that realization that somehow we pulled back. But what can we do to ensure that other people don't, if we can help it, get to that same point, you know?
Yeah.
I think a really good important thing for that we can kind of going back to Yahya, what you were saying, there's the kind of two different people that we're kind of aiming at. I guess that other half being the people around you who
Mm.
kind of get this in response that, oh, I'm struggling, and you're kind of there like, what do I do? How can I
I
help?
think it's scary for people.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of people jump into they're either scared, they don't know what to say, and they're kind of like, I don't know how to handle this. Or they're oh my God, let me try save you and repair you, let me be the fixer.
Mm.
Here's your solution. But sometimes, like Hamza, you were saying, I told some people for practical advice, but then sometimes just to vent. And I feel like how people manage that venting or that expression of like, oh, I'm struggling is very important because it can either push you away from doing that again or kind of encourage you to, I guess, do that again. And I feel like not always the solution and this is also advice to myself that I had to give myself a lot of the time, was that you don't have to help others. There's a thing about sitting with someone in that discomfort, in that feeling, not trying to pick it up yourself or put it on your old shoulders or try to take it away from them, but rather just helping someone kind of carry that load. Um, yeah,
That could be a man thing also.
yeah.
We're fixers, aren't we? You
Mm.
know. So yeah, a lot of the time when someone comes to us with an issue or problem or whatnot, yeah, you do want to solve it. You know. Yeah, I think sometimes it can be hard to just sit and listen, especially when it's uncomfortable. You know, and you're there biting your tongue when, in your opinion, you've got the answer. I know what we need to do. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Um, so there's a thing called open dialogue, which is really good. And sometimes when you let someone vent enough and you just openly steer the conversation, they can get the answers themselves.
Yes. And those answers are the answers that stick. That's the
Yeah.
truth. Because nobody wants to be told.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be told. And it won't absorb anyway at that point. But when you can help to facilitate somebody to come to that realization, because they have their solutions to their own issue in reality, but it's about enabling them to access it.
Hmm.
And I guess to some extent that does relieve the pressure, right? From so again, if we're talking to the people who are the not the spectator, but the not
Course,
not
it's
not
cool.
the person who's in the difficulty. They're
Yeah.
the companion, they're the parent, they're the child, they're the colleague, they're the whatever. I guess it is a reassurance that it's not your job to fix it. It's your job to be there to the capacity that you have.
So that's the
Um,
other thing I would say. For someone who has noticed that a friend or a family member is going through a dark time and you try to be their support system and you feel like they're not engaging with you or not communicating with you or even being verbally abusive or whatnot, um, don't let that dishearten you.
mm,
So, unfortunately, everybody's route to recovery is different.
mm,
And in a and even mental health aside, and it's just a mentally challenging time. The only thing that you can do on your part is be consistent in supporting them. That doesn't necessarily mean fixing the issue. That just means checking in. Phone call, text, pop up in person. Phone call, text, pop up in person. When they're ready to have a conversation, they'll know that it's you who's been there, that's been checking on them this whole time.
mm,
So the comfortability should be there because you built that rapport of sincerity of continuing to come to show up while they've been going through something that they haven't wanted to share. And I think that's important to recognize. Um, Ultimately, if it becomes a factor where worry gets involved of someone's harm to themselves or anybody else, then yeah, unfortunately, you have to seek else. You have to seek services. And there are people you can have conversations regarding that, whether that would be us to touch base with as the Muslim lived experience, whether that be an ambulance, whether that be their local GP. You know, unfortunately, there's a lot of people who have mental health diagnoses and their family members don't even know because remember,
Yeah.
the patient and the service user can disclose you can't share this with nobody else,
mm,
especially if they're 18 or not. We all like when I used to work for a forensic mental health team, I'd have to touch base with service users every time I meet them because they can change their mind just like that.
mm,
Yeah, you can share this with my mom. We can't select no, 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 no. And the whole dynamic change, whether that's medication, CTO renewal, like, but everything's changed. So there are people who are living in households with people who may not even be aware of what's going
yeah.
on, you know, and they may have just put their head down and someone may have noticed things look a bit different or they look like they're going through a tough time, but they haven't shared how tough that time is. And a lot of us are good at disguising things, you know, and they may have just cracked on, as we said initially, put their head into work, carried on doing this, carried on doing that. Looks like they're taking extra shifts. But for all you know, they're seeing their GP every so often,
Mm,
you know, especially if it's a family member who doesn't live with you. And I don't know, you're in London, they're in up north or something like that.
Mm.
Well, you know, they've been on a 28-day section and come back into the community. You're none the wiser because you guys speak on the phone from time to time and you may see each other quarterly. This is reality,
Yeah.
you know. So I think, yeah, we should be aware of letting people know that the quote unquote support systems, and I say that because the person's reached out to you, so they've identified you as someone who they think is a support system, and you not knowing how to navigate through that, where you can seek help if you can't be consistently supporting them by checking in and touching base, is seek information from a GP, seek information from your local mental health services, seek information from us as in the Muslim Lived Experience Network. Um, Even call your own GP and say this is a scenario.
Mm.
What would you suggest? You know, yeah, we're in an era where if you don't know, you can seek some advice. You know,
Mm.
and it shouldn't be too hard to get a phone number of somewhere to initially seek some advice.
Mm. And I always think as well, like when you do seek advice, it's really like a tough pill to swallow for some people, but some advice is better than others. Some services, some people are significantly better than others, even within the same service. Some GPs within the same practice will be significantly better than others.
100%.
And you might kind of call, let's say, a crisis line or helpline here, and that wasn't as effective as something else. Or you might just go to your GP, kind of the first line that you think, oh, this is what I should be doing, and they were very unhelpful. Maybe you just wanted to talk about a problem and they just slapped you on medication or something like that. So then when you do talk to someone, let's say on a crisis line or through, charity or third sector organizations, you find it significantly helpful. So it's, I guess some of it is about trying it out, looking for what's out there. What do you actually want? As your support as well, because there's a lot. There's a lot. If you give it a little Google, you'll find a lot. And if you talk to some people and say, "Is there any more?" They'll usually signpost you to so many more. So everything is there. It's just about if you're going to access it, and then if you have that motivation to then do something when you're accessing it as well, because you could passively access it and then you won't really get anything from it.
Do you remember a service called Checking and Chat?
I think so. Have they changed the name?
That's what I was. That's what it took me so long to even say that. Yeah, because I was thinking, is that the right name? But yeah. So I remember Checking and Chat. I used to supervise some of the people who would take the phone calls because obviously it could be a lot on them also. Yeah.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I was really impressed with their services. You know, because people could call anonymously, and I think they were. I think if my memory serves me right, they would get like initially 12 calls,
Okay.
you know, and then based on how it was getting towards the end, they could get a few more. But by then, if things were alarming, they'd be referred elsewhere. If they needed some more support, um, within that time, they would the person on the phone would have someone like a supervisor, which was what I was doing at the time, would maybe seek resources in that person's local area where they could transition over while they still had calls left, if that made sense. So I don't know, for instance, you're on your eighth call, the last four are coming up. How do we start making these steps now and transition you into something else if it seems like you need some more time or you need some more support? And even if you don't, where can you go in between if you feel like you may need to at another time, you know? And at first I was thinking it was very short, but then it makes sense in both sides because one is anonymous, but then two, the connection doesn't become too strong between the two people, you know, because it's about venting support and a lane
To
to
enable,
navigate.
to empower. Yeah, 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 yeah. This is the, and this is as you're talking about that, it makes me think about my work because I was having a conversation today actually and talking about working with different kinds of people within a coaching context and how that relationship can kind of develop, but how you have to be very careful all the time that it doesn't become something of dependency and it doesn't become something of an additional unhealthy attachment because ultimately everything is back to enabling and facilitating for that person to come to the solutions to find a way to make that switch and to make that change and to take those steps. Um, because it's not about forcing them and it's not about, you know, I can't none of us and back to the overall thing we're talking in terms of like how responsible are you for anyone else? You do everything you can, but you
Yeah.
can't save anyone ultimately, right? Like as hard as that sounds.
Mhm.
The system's become a crutch for a lot of people, unfortunately.
Mm,
And what I think support systems and professionals need to be mindful of is the balance between sharing and building a genuine rapport and bond with someone and expressing empathy and compassion. At the same time, having boundaries,
mm,
because the same way a lot of service users and patients, the system has become a crutch for them. You don't want that person to feel that you're the only person that can
mm,
help.
mm, mm, mm,
Because one, that puts a lot of pressure on you, and two, it puts a lot of pressure on them because they're thinking, I can't talk to no one else but him.
mm.
That's not good. That's not healthy, you know? And yeah, I've seen that a lot.
Yeah, and again, it can happen very naturally because when the person starts to engage with whatever kind of support is there in whatever format that is, and they start to feel changes taking place, or they've they're resonating with somebody for the first time, or it's like, okay, this person gets it. That in and of itself is quite addictive in a way
Yeah, it
because
creates a
it's
bond.
like finally feel good, right?
Mm.
But yeah, you have to constantly kind of keep it in check.
Mhm.
Yeah, but those kind of bonds can be you can dislike someone and sharing a part of you that you haven't shared with anybody else. It almost naturally and subconsciously creates a bond with you and that person because you're giving them something
Mm,
that you haven't given to anybody else. You know, and that's where it can become scary. And I'm
mm,
talking about on a first time basis.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
whether that's seeing a psychologist or psychotherapist or going to trauma therapy
Mm,
and
mm,
disliking the initial approach that someone's come into the room for. I was there for change and I needed it.
mm,
So regardless of that person's appearance or my assumption of how they may encounter with me or the first encounter, I knew what it was going to do for me, so I stuck it out.
mm,
You know, but then opening up and sharing what I had to share with that person, a bond was created, even if they still may have a bit of dislike for that particular person, if that makes sense,
Mm.
mm,
or uncomfortability with that person, shall I say? But based on me wanting to do this because I know what it's going to do for me, the bond gets done without my say so because
mm.
of what I'm giving, what
I
I'm
think some of it is down to
paying.
it's that thing that for once the person kind of feels safe, for once the person feels safe.
Mm.
And particularly in very complex situations, very traumatic prior situations, and that's what's been missing, isn't it? There's never actually been any kind of legitimate safety established.
Oh, you know what? I'm thinking of like a example that, well, as you lot are talking, kind of is going through my head, but I'm thinking of, and I've seen it quite a lot, especially when I was growing up. I've seen it in my family and all sorts of, but like specifically in terms of addiction, where someone's really struggling with addiction and they feel like the only piece of person they can provide it is the person they're using with, or someone who's also struggling with the addiction in their close circle.
Mm,
It's just, yeah, we should be doing better. We should. And it's kind of bringing that, we're now a collective. We're two people who are addicts or users or whatever you want to call it. And it's just not a very helpful relationship. And I think a lot of it does kind of stem from, I guess, that belief that no one really understands, no one can help me. But I always find that a really interesting belief that people hold because it's like you're going to a service where that's the only thing they see the whole day. Let's say you go to an addiction service, they see people like you all day, every day for God knows how many years. I
mm,
always think that your experience is not unique. There's no unique experience on this planet. Someone has gone through something you've gone through before. Someone has felt the same way you have felt based on that experience before. The same thing can happen to all three of us, and we'll all have three different reactions. But my belief is that I don't think those reactions are really unique. And that's not to make us not feel special, like, oh my God, someone's had a problem before, we're not special, but rather that someone has dealt with that and there is a solution out there. There is a way to kind of work through it. It's actually a benefit of it not being unique because
Mm.
it's there, and where there's a problem, there's a solution.
Yeah, yeah, I agree to an extent. I'd say initially, I think the term that they use is trauma bonding,
Mm,
when two people confide in the same thing instead of going externally because misery likes company, so they trauma bond. Um, Regarding the aspect of no thing being unique, I think, in my opinion, it's the other way around. We're all individuals, so our journeys will always be different, however small. But the feelings is what connects us, and
mm,
that's how we connect. So that part's the same. So, for example, I don't know, there's a million ways we could walk to the shop. And no, that's a wrong example. That's a poor example. Um,
I, I'm
there's a
gonna.
loads, there's a loads of ways that can raise anger, yeah, and the result of what could come from anger, yeah, but the feeling will remain the same, you know. And I use my own experiences when I say this a lot of time. So I was sectioned at 22, and I went to prison at 28. There'll be a lot of people who can relate. There'll be a lot of people who can't. But what everybody will relate to, whether they've been to prison or been sectional or they haven't, are the feelings that I went through leading up to being in those spaces and being in both those spaces. Because unfortunately, it's natural to go through the course of the elements of feelings as humans. We all go through them, but we don't go all through, but we don't all walk the same walk of life.
Mm.
Some may have similar events happen because there's a million people who have been to prison, there's a million people who have been sectioned. But what led up to it, how it felt, how it, the course of action that it took, and the events that happened to them while they were in those places would have been slightly different. But the feelings would all touch into those pockets,
mm,
whether you've been in those spaces or you haven't. Um, and that's where I feel, in my opinion, a lot of professionals don't bridge the gap because they focus on the event instead of the feeling. And it makes them feel so much further away from who they're trying to support. And then the person that they're trying to support feels so much further away because they're both looking at it from different perspectives. I've been sectioned, I've been to prison, this person can't understand me. That person's been to prison, that person's been sectioned, I can't understand them. They came from a deprived background, grew up in council estates. I grew up in a family home where our parents have been married all my life, and that's all I know. Middle class, this, that. You're doing too much separations. You're focusing on the wrong things. So the gap can't get bridged because you're not even focusing on trying to bridge it
mm,
by notifying that initially what the baseline is that you're both humans. You're going to go through anger, you're going to go through frustration, you're going to go through loss. Um, these are the things where the conversation can start. There'll be different experiences with those feelings, but now you're starting to build rapport because you're talking about the same topic.
mm.
The title is the same, the feeling, the stories that go with it are different,
Yeah,
but it still connects you. Does that make sense?
yeah. I think with there's kind of two things. There's the combination of factors that anyone has been through is a series of things that all of us have been through, but some of us have been through some of them and not all of them, and the way they then mix up. But then our job in that element and perspective of support is how do we draw out the commonality within that so that we're able to relate, even if we don't relate directly. And therefore, I think this angle of yeah, it's not about not making the person feel that they're special or unique, but in that it is possible to address this thing. You do how you got there and everything that stacked up until Buckaroo came off
Yeah.
is that's your story, that's your story, that's my story. But within your story, there's something that I can, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. So let's pin into that and then
In my opinion, that's the feeling.
mm, mm,
Yeah.
mm. So
And
let's
that goes
bring
for the
it
carer,
back.
that goes for the carer, like what you're saying earlier. So for the person who's struggling to engage with someone, or doesn't know, feels discomfort in what's being shared, or the behavior that they're noticing, or the change in somebody.
Mm,
As I said prior, be consistent with the support. But what you do see, obviously, it'll be only an assumption until they get to the space where they're ready to reveal to you.
mm.
But what is this behavior difference that you're noticing? What does it look like to you? And what does that what are the options and possibilities of those feelings, or based on what you're seeing? Do they look depressed? Do they look tired?
Mm,
Why do they feel like that? Do they do is it something that that is a possibility that they may feel lonely, they may feel unheard? How was it when you was in that space? There may have been a time when you felt lonely, you felt unheard,
mm.
you felt patronized, you felt like everything right now was too much. You know, that gives you a different perspective, and that also bridges the gap with empathy and compassion.
I feel like there's so many, this opens like in my
Yeah,
head, there's like so many directions to go. I don't know how long we've been on the call, but I
yeah,
feel like it would be really useful to try and if we go back to like almost the title and because I'm really aware that like I love this conversation, right? And we love this conversation and like we could carry on and carry on, but I feel like I wanna make sure there's like some clarity in a message that we leave with. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Which is why I think identifying it, there was those kind of two persons is kind of useful. But back to actually navigating. So you're now the person who is in the mess. You're in the dark. You're on the edge. And it's only a few more steps, and that edge is we know where that edge is going, and we don't want to go there, inshallah. May Allah protect us. And some of us we've been there, right? Literally. But how do we navigate? Let's I mean, I know it's a million and one things, but where do we go?
I, me personally, I've always weighed up the two because when you're kind of in, I think when you're indifferent and you're stuck whether or not to continue as you are, because all your life you've been able to kind of handle everything, or kind of seek that support, which violates a bunch of things or beliefs that you hold about yourself, masculinity, what men should do and can't do. I always weigh up a very simple cost benefits analysis in my head. If I continue, how is this going to affect me, my family, my friends, or relationship, my quality with God, my quality with myself? And then what's the kind of benefits and costs of seeking support, no matter who it is, professional, not professional, familial, platonic, and then what will that look like? Even if that means getting out a pen and paper, literally making a thought against costs, benefits, and then writing down what's going to happen and then kind of seeing that tangibly on the paper. Okay, it makes more sense because sometimes that's what logically clicks in your brain of that
Mm,
this is the thing that makes sense for me to get off the edge and actually turn around at all the things that are there for me to use, whether that's an anchor or a person or this or that or a parachute, just something that can kind of be that object or sense source of support in that very specific moment.
no, like I feel like open, so I think Yaya
say
should
again?
close. I said I think I open, so I think Yaya should close. Did you hear me?
No, no, it's quiet. Say again.
I'm sorry, I said I open, so I feel you should close.
Okay. Um, well, I want to hear your input on this, so you better speak then.
I feel I'll be going over what I've said prior, so I feel
Okay,
you should
okay,
close.
okay. I think so. So obviously, there's something that you came to earlier, and you talked about firstly identifying, and then you come to kind of the strategies and the coping mechanisms, and how you can shift from certain negative behaviors and remove those and implement positive behaviors. Um, and then what you're saying is you're talking about kind of being able to sort of sit and rationalize what's going on and weigh up everything against each other. I think. I think that kind of happens in order to do that. But I think the truth of it is that when you're really, really, really in that mess, part of that mess is nothing is clear.
Mm.
Nothing is clear. And there's a lot of white noise. It's a blur. And a lot of the time you're not really seeing reality for reality.
Mm.
You're Everything is kind of out of line, everything is out of whack, and your perception of yourself and everything else is so misaligned that it's incredibly difficult to really identify what's going on. But yes, the solution lies ultimately in gaining clarity over what is actually happening. And I believe taking as much ownership of those aspects as possible. Not to negate the environment, not to negate the circumstances, not to negate the poor behavior from other people, the abuse from other people, the what happened before, your upbringing, this. But I think for me, you have to do everything you can to step back as much as you're able to gain oversight of what's there and have clarity so you can really see like things are not okay. That has to be the first step. But then how much of that am I actively playing into or passively playing into? So, because obviously the change ultimately is facilitated by Allah, but the change is going to come from me and my action. Back to everything we said so far, like no one else can, they can help me, they can support me, they can listen to me, they can nudge me, they can signpost for me, but they can't do the work itself. And so for me, it comes to that clarity and really understanding like where am I and what is going on, and then how can I own what is happening. And then what you're saying, if I don't like what's happening, where do I adjust the balance on the various factors in my life in order to, but I think one real message is that change is possible. And again, it's not easy, but I like to say it's simple. It's incredibly complex, but you take a step and you go towards some good and you do some more and you leave off something that you know is not helping, you'll you can get there. You can get there, inshallah.
Sure.
Um, yeah,
Intention, dua, and action.
Mm.
100%. Say it louder. Say it louder.
Intention, dua, action.
Mm,
There it is. There it is. The only other thing I wanted to say as well is just because I think a lot of people could watch something like this and be like, I'm not currently struggling, or I was, and now this isn't as applicable to me. But have a plan. Have a plan.
mm,
Have all of this as if it was happening or it were to happen. So if it ever did, because it might, most likely, statistically, it's going to happen. What are you going to do? Know exactly what to do. Even if that means, like, once again, writing it down. Who am I going to talk to, let's say, in my friends or in my family, or which services would I access? What would I want? What would I not want? Um, have all of that because it's just a safety plan. It's just smart to know what you could do in advance to it happening.
Yeah, totally agree, man. That's yeah. That's you hit the nail on there.
yeah, I think it is just to keep ourselves in, like we talked about before, to be honest, is that ongoing reflection, that ongoing kind of like audit of where am I? And I think if we can be realistic with ourselves and we can be honest with ourselves, then we know if we know somewhere where we are on that line, you know. Inshallah.
Sounds good. Anyone got anything else they want to say?
Uh, that's me.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. I think the
Alhamdulillah,
only
brothers.
other
Good
thing
to
I
catch
could,
up, man.
very good, very good. I think the only other thing is that we spoke a lot about reflection, but we actually have kind of recorded one of these on reflection, how to do it, what it's
Mm,
like,
mm, mm.
do's and the don'ts of it, and that's quite important to know if you don't
You're
mind.
recording.
It's recorded. We've recorded it, no?
Okay.
Alaikum
Well,
salam. But yeah, go back and watch our previous videos, guys. He's on mute. It's cool.